number of countries seem suddenly again interested in grabbing a piece of that lunar pie in the sky. On Friday, Russia is due to launch its attempt to put a lander on the surface of the moon.
What does it take for a nation to prove it still belongs on the world stage of space exploration? For Russia, Luna 25 was supposed to answer that question. Instead, it crashed. Today, we'll explore why that failure stings so much, how sanctions, budget constraints, and missed opportunities may have set the stage, and why the moon is suddenly the most contested destination in the solar system. Is this a single stumble, or the end of a legacy? By the end, you'll see why Luna 25 was never just about one spacecraft. But before we move on, I would like to ask you for a quick favor. We are just starting out, so your support means the world to us. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. And now let's dive right into the uncovering of our today's episode. Imagine being absent from a race for almost half a century and then stepping back onto the track as if nothing had changed. That was the atmosphere inside Russia's space program when Luna 25 rolled out as their first lunar mission since 1976. The gap itself tells you everything. Nearly 50 years without a landing attempt, a time long enough for generations of engineers and leaders to retire, for entire industries to shift, and for rivals like the United States, China, and India to strengthen their presence on the moon. For Russia, this wasn't just another mission. It was a declaration that it could still compete at the highest level of exploration, standing among the current space powers rather than only pointing back to old glories of the Soviet era. Yet the timing carried more weight than the long pause alone. Russia launched this project while facing shrinking budgets and a geopolitical environment that limited collaborations it once considered standard. Sanctions after the invasion of Ukraine isolated the country's high-tech industries, and the consequences spilled directly into space. Where previous missions would have allied with European partners on instrumentation or communications, Luna 25 flew with noticeable absences. The European Space Agency had even withdrawn a precision landing camera that was meant to increase the probe's safety margin. Without that subsystem, engineers were left to rely on their older alternatives. That example captures more than a missing camera. It illustrated how politics tightened the margin for error before the spacecraft even left Earth's atmosphere. Despite those constraints, the mission goals sounded ambitious and forward-looking. Luna 25 was meant to demonstrate that Russia could manage a precision landing close to the moon's south pole, one of the most sought-after sites in modern planetary science. This area is believed to hold frozen water in its shadowed craters, material that could support future living quarters and even fuel production for onward journeys. After landing, its small suite of instruments would probe soil chemistry, measure dust interactions, and search for that water-ice signature hidden beneath the surface layers. The test run would also clear the path for a set of follow-on Luna missions coordinated with China in the coming decade, moving toward a possible joint robotic base. The idea was not only scientific curiosity, but also showing capacity to participate in building the infrastructure for humanity's next great leap. Inside Russia, officials framed all this as a revival, finally resuming the proud tradition that once put the first spacecraft and the first human beyond Earth. But independent observers offered a different tone. They pointed to declining budgets, repeated delays across other projects, and hardware often recycled rather than redesigned for newer frontiers. To some, Luna 25 looked less like a comeback and more like a fragile attempt to cling to past status. The contrast between the rhetoric and the reality made the spacecraft symbolic of a wider debate. Was this the sign of renewed strength, or the evidence of a system stretched too thin? When the rocket launched successfully, those questions were briefly swept aside by relief. For the first time in 50 years, a Russian spacecraft was on its way to the moon. But arriving in lunar orbit was never meant to be the finish line. It was only the threshold. The real test waited in the complex maneuvers still to come. One maneuver stood between Luna 25 and history, but instead, it sealed the mission's fate. After years of development and a launch wrapped in symbolism, the probe had completed its long trip from Earth and slipped into lunar orbit. For a brief moment, optimism seemed justified. Russia's first spacecraft to the moon in decades was circling its target, sending back confirmation that critical systems were functioning. Engineers at Mission Control could finally breathe after a tense journey across 384,000 kilometers of space. The sense of revival, the hope that years of delay had been worth it, all centered on what would come next: a controlled descent to the moon's surface. Everything hinged on a single engine burn to prepare the craft for landing. That crucial step came on August 19th. The spacecraft was supposed to make a careful adjustment to lower its orbit and line up with the chosen landing site near the lunar South Pole. For even modern space agencies, these maneuvers are nerve-wracking. Timing has to match to the second, power levels must follow precise calculations, and the engines need to shut down before the trajectory overshoots the mark. It's like threading a needle while moving at several kilometers per second. The Russian engineers gathered around screens tracking telemetry, hoping each number lined up with their models. Every adjustment in lunar orbit is a high-stakes gamble because if the burn goes even slightly wrong, the moon's gravity can shift the craft into an unpredictable path. As controllers fired the engines, they expected a measured response. Instead, the data looked odd. The impulse readings crept beyond what was planned, and the spacecraft was now in a path that did not match the guidance commands. Later, Roscosmos would describe this as an unpredictable orbit, an understated phrase that in plain terms meant the probe was now heading into danger. From that moment, the mission had slipped out of their control. Independent specialists, watching the situation unfold, suggested the flight control system had long-standing vulnerabilities. Some of its software patches had been reworked over years of delays, while hardware revisions never fully solved performance gaps. To them, the failure was less a surprise and more the result of overstrained engineering held together under political pressure. Communication windows passed with no recovery. On August 20th, the team finally confirmed that Luna 25 had struck the lunar surface. The loss of signal left no space for hopeful speculation. The spacecraft was gone. Roscosmos announced bluntly that the lander had ceased to exist. What made the news sting even more was the timing. Just days later, India's Chandrayaan-3 executed a precise soft landing near the same polar region, placing its country in the spotlight as the newest member of the small club of successful lunar landers. Inside Russian Mission Control, the moment they realized the trajectory was unstoppable came when their tracking simulations failed to produce any safe orbit. That was the instant everyone knew the spacecraft would inevitably crash. But even in the silence that followed, parts of Luna 25's story would continue, in the lessons it left behind and the fragments of science salvaged before things went wrong. Can a failed mission still deliver discoveries worth remembering? Luna 25's story didn't end the moment its metal frame shattered on the lunar surface. Even though the spacecraft never achieved its historic landing, science teams had already gathered data during its short time in lunar orbit. This meant that while Russia faced a national embarrassment, the mission had not been completely wasted. The instruments on board, designed to probe for potential resources and study surface conditions, did manage to relay valuable information before the crash. Those fragments of scientific achievement became the quiet counterpart to all the loud headlines about failure. The central dream of Luna 25 was clear from the start: probe the south pole of the moon to confirm and map deposits of frozen water. Finding usable water on the moon isn't just a neat fact. It could be the foundation of a future base, fuel for spacecraft, and even support for long-term exploration. Without a landing, that major mission objective collapsed. But even from orbit, the probe could observe and record. Its instruments, tuned for variations in surface composition, scanned key craters and delivered clues that researchers can use for planning. The difference between what Luna 25 promised and what it actually left behind highlights a sharp tension. The mission never had the chance to prove its design, yet it still slipped fresh data into the global pool of lunar science. Scientists and policy analysts remain split on what doomed the craft. Was it poor funding, political overreach, and decaying management inside the Russian space sector? Or was it simply the unavoidable risk that comes with soft landing on the moon, one of the most difficult feats in engineering? Whatever the deeper cause, the scientific data proved that not everything was lost. By revealing the uneven distribution of hydrogen around craters, Luna 25, fulfilled a part of its purpose, even in failure. And that forces a bigger question. Where does this leave Russia's claim to being a space superpower? Luna 25 was never just about testing equipment. It carried the weight of proving whether Russia still belonged among active space powers or if its achievements had become history. One robotic lander turned into a symbol for status, pride, and national capability. The crash left that question unanswered, at least in the way leaders had hoped. So what do you think? Was this a stumble in an already difficult pursuit, or is it evidence of long-term decline? The moon race has returned as crowded and competitive as ever, and every success or failure shapes who gets closer to tomorrow's lunar frontier.